I'm Tom. I'm president of AAUP, faculty member at Rutgers, and I use he, him pronouns, and it is wonderful to be with you all tonight. And we have a program really focused on these amazing mutual defense pacts, which have been popping off. I'm going to give a short intro to it, but first I'm going to pass the mic to our amazing executive director, Mia McIver, who's going to walk us through some protocols for our meetings. So, Mia, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mia McIver, Executive Director of the AAP. It's great to see you all here. I think the program tonight is going to be really interesting and really empowering. We want to make sure that this space feels open and frank and also trustful. And so we want to ask everyone here tonight to commit not to record the meeting's audio or video or transcript, and not to disclose the contents of the conversation to the media. We want to also ask if there are whether there are any journalists who are present on the Zoom call currently. Could you let us know if you are a journalist, please? All right. Just in case. Okay. Megan, let me follow up with you because we consider this event to be closed to the media. But I will follow up with you, Megan. Let's see. We also want to ask everybody to speak and act here as if the conversation could be shared publicly, and be aware that that is always a possibility. All right, thanks everybody.
Mia, would you like to just say something about the fact that the Zoom meeting is being recorded and how that might be distributed, if at all, just so people know how that plays in with what we're asking them to do?
Yes, Afshan, actually, could I toss that back to you, because I was not part of that decision. So if you could speak to it, that'd be great.
Well, the meeting is being recorded. From what we were told, the speakers were asked if we give consent for it to be recorded. So I'm just hearing this for the first time. So I wanted to see what the rules were, given what we were told, that this is being recorded, and then the fact that others can't record it. I assume the intent is that the AUP will circulate the video the way that it sees fit among its membership or in its website, but that we don't want, I'm guessing here, we don't want snippets being taken out of this without people knowing that that's happening.
That's definitely the case. I will convene a conversation after tonight about whether or how the recording will be used. I have not been part of those conversations up until now.
All right.
Yeah, I can just add. So we asked the people who are going to present if they're comfortable with us recording. They are. If we share this event, we will not share Q&A. So we will only share the presentations from the people presenting who have given consent. So anyone else who's here and their comments will not be shared, will not be put online. We may, in fact, put this up on the website. We haven't figured that out yet, just to be clear. So anybody else who's here, we commit, we will not put up nor post any content that is not from the presenters of the event itself.
All right.
Okay, so I want to get us in. This is such a great topic. And so all I'll say is at the top is we all know what time it is right now. We've been under, so many attacks from every direction. Many of those attacks are coming directly from the federal government, but our administrations have not stood up the way we need to. I think we all know that by now. It's unfortunate. And so there's been all sorts of different ways that we have been approaching it as AAUP, responding to the threats in our sector, but also we have amazing leaders who have come up with amazing strategies on their own that have bubbled up and taken a lot of space. One of those is the mutual academic defense pacts. And so what we really want to do here tonight is hear from different folks who have moved these through their senates, whether faculty senates or university senates, um, and hear why and what they've achieved and why they achieved it, and give folks in other universities or colleges the opportunity to consider moving it forward. And we're also thinking with Jennifer and Kathy, and they'll say more at the end about how we can support you all in moving some of these defense pacts at other schools. And I also think there's a consortium of folks who are thinking about that as well. So it's really a space to share and to learn, so that when we come back in the fall and we're in the next round of fights, not that the first round of fights is over, we got a lot of work to do. We are ready, and we're ready to put the appropriate pressure on our administrations so that they stand firm and they stand by the values of higher ed and they stand by academic freedom. So with that, I'm gonna pass it to Afshan Jafar, but just by way of introduction, Afshan is a professor of sociology at Connecticut College. She is the amazing chair of Committee T, which does work, which is focuses on governance, shared governance, and tenure. And she's also the author, the chair of, and one of the key authors of the recent report on Muhlenberg, which is a fabulous report. Maybe we'll share it in the chat. If you haven't read it, please do read it. And with that, I'm going to pass it to you, Afshan. And thank you for helping us run this tonight and for your leadership in Committee T.
Thank you, Todd, for the introduction and for your remarks. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us tonight for this important conversation. I want to start with a brief recounting, very brief recounting of a conversation with a colleague of mine in the English department some months back. When we heard the news of the government withholding federal funds and sending ransom notes to institutions, my colleague said to me, "What we need is a declaration of independence for institutions of higher education, independence from the federal or state government and its various coercive tactics." I've gone back to this conversation in my head several times since I had it back in whatever it was, January or February. And with the 4th of July coming around, the idea of a Declaration of Independence doesn't seem so far-fetched and has a certain appeal to me now. But any form of independence for colleges and universities from political interference can only be based on a mutual dependence on each other and a collective and mutual sense of obligation for preserving higher education and not just our individual institutions. It seems to me that mutual defense pacts that our speakers will discuss tonight do precisely that. As various things loom over our heads, from endowment taxes to attacks on academic freedom and governance, we now more than ever need to think about what we mean by a collective defense of higher education in this environment. Of special concern to us tonight is how we make these mutual defense pacts meaningful. How do we make them mean something beyond a symbolic gesture, beyond a statement by the faculty? That is, how do we get the administration of these various institutions to get behind these particular pacts that the faculty have signed through various resolutions and motions on their campuses? And how do we get the administration to put the financial resources and commitment behind such pacts? We have a wonderful lineup of speakers for you who will detail in their comments the efforts on their own campuses regarding mutual defense pacts. They will discuss how they drafted and passed these on their campuses and hopefully give us ideas for what we might be able to do on our own campuses. With that, let me introduce the first speaker tonight. Our first speaker is Paul Boxer. Paul Boxer is a professor of psychology at Rutgers University and a member of the Rutgers University Senate Executive Committee. With a PhD in clinical psychology, Paul has been at Rutgers since 2006, focusing on a program of research focused on the development and treatment of aggression and violence among children and adolescents. Along with Professor Salas de la Cruz, he drafted Rutgers' Mutual Defense Compact, which inspired additional Big Ten schools and others to pass their own resolutions and statements of solidarity. Paul, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you to all the AAUP organizers for inviting me and for hosting this. This is a great topic to be talking about right now for all the reasons that everybody just went through. I'm going to share my screen and hope that it shares successfully. And I'm going to start my slideshow and hope also that that works. Let's see. Excellent. Can you see my title screen there? Great. So I guess everything started at Rutgers. Although I want to just say right off the bat that you'll hear from other speakers tonight, and if you take a look at the tracker, which I think was shared with the meeting information, you'll see some other examples of terrific resolution versions of this mutual academic defense resolution that dramatically improved upon what we put together. But so I want to talk a little bit about just how this came to be, but with a couple of key pieces of background. So we are a university senate at Rutgers. We are not a faculty senate. Our senate is comprised of faculty, of staff, of students, and of alums. And we operate, like any other university or faculty senate, but it is important to note that we are not just faculty. The second thing that's important to note is that we are a faculty senate, we are a university senate that has had some, let's say, less than pleasant exchanges with our university president over the last several years. President Jonathan Holloway, who actually stepped down just a couple of days ago. We had some contentious relations with him during our big faculty strike that happened in 2023, which was followed by a number of other problematic things that went down over the next several months after that strike was resolved, that led to us voting no confidence in his leadership and potentially bringing a close to his academic career because he is leaving Rutgers to enter the nonprofit sector. In any event, I'm not saying that to be bragging about it, but just to kind of, or apologizing for it, but just to kind of put some context here, that when we did come together and put forward our resolution, our sincere hope at that point was, hey, President Holloway is on his way out the door. We've had some challenges with him, but this gives him the chance to redeem some of the problems that he had potentially with a really massive action to take in defense of academic freedom and all these other issues that he really got behind during his tenure with us. And fast forward to, well, I'll get to that. It didn't work, but I'll get to that. So back in March, my colleague David Salas de la Cruz, who is a professor of chemistry on our Camden campus, and I attended a meeting of all the university senates in the Big Ten Academic Alliance, which of course doesn't have 10 schools, it has 18. And we're just to listen. We asked our Senate chair if we could get the link to just tune in and see what was being talked about, and we did. And they were discussing this issue, not the mutual defense issue, but this idea of, is there any way that the Big Ten could possibly come together to deal with these attacks that we were starting to see? Many of our institutions were on those lists that were sent out by I believe the DOE's Office of Civil Rights Division, identifying our campuses as targets for further investigation. It was both Rutgers, New Brunswick, as well as Rutgers, Newark were on those lists. And so we really felt like we were in the crosshairs and we needed to be planful and think about what we could do. Now, as a university senate, our power was limited. We are primarily advisory. We have a very few select set of regulatory functions that we can do, but nothing, we certainly can't ourselves put Rutgers into any kind of collaborative compact like this. But we figured, listening to the rhetoric that we were hearing in that Senate meeting, that mutual Senate meeting of all the Big Ten senates, it just didn't seem like it was going to be strong enough to fit the bill. And David had this great observation of, maybe we should do something kind of along the lines of NATO, right? I mean, why can't we just have like an academic NATO? Those were literally, I think, the words that he said. This idea that if any one institution is singled out for these baseless, capricious political attacks, all other institutions should come to the defense of that institution. So we drafted up a resolution to reflect that. We called it the Resolution to Establish a Mutual Defense Compact for the Universities of the Big Ten Academic Alliance in defense of academic freedom, institutional integrity, and the research enterprise. It's a lot of words, but it's a resolution, and it's a university senate. We're going to get wordy, but the real, the idea here was simply that, and we focused on the Big Ten. That was the meeting that we had attended, and that is the sort of natural conference that we're in at Rutgers. The Big Ten also happens to be mostly large, comprehensive public research universities. The enrollment across the Big Ten is almost 1 million students. hundreds of thousands of staff and faculty and so on. And so it's a large, and you can tune into our college football games every Saturday on our own television network. So it's a pretty big deal. We thought that this would be a good coalition for this kind of organizing. So the basic principle behind the resolution was that the preservation of one institution's integrity is the concern of all, and an infringement against one member university of the Big Ten shall be considered an infringement against all. That's kind of the core foundational point. I put that little photo in there so you can see it's not just me, it's also David. We can talk about the New York Times story later. That's where that picture comes from. I'm using it without permission. That's the way it goes. In any event, we passed this resolution, and in our university senate, we're used to passing resolutions that really go nowhere except the president's email box. His job is to read them and respond in some way. Sometimes he chooses not to respond, sometimes he responds, but in this case, I still don't know how the link to the resolution got out, but my good friend now and colleague Michael Yarbrough from the City University of New York somehow got a handle on it, found the link, shared it on his Blue Sky account, and within a day or so it went viral. And all of a sudden, people were emailing us, people were commenting on Michael's post. I reopened my Blue Sky account to start paying attention to this, and it really seemed to strike a chord and take hold. There were comments that were being shared along the lines of, finally, somebody's doing something. And especially with respect to higher ed, but organized, resistance across the board in general. Our very first press, sincere thanks to Michael for sharing that. Our first press coverage of this came in Common Dreams. I believe the author of this piece was Julia Finley. Rutgers Senate proposes Big Ten Mutual Defense Compact. We started getting a lot of questions and a lot of inquiries from other universities and colleges about how to do similar work on their home institutions and kind of continue to move this forward. After we got this initial burst of press, we thought, maybe the timing is right to push our president really, really hard and see if he wants to make use of his final 2 months at Rutgers to do something about this. We pushed an open letter to him that was signed by about half of the senators in our Senate. We published it online as well. Essentially, I don't want to say begging, that's maybe a little too strong, but really strongly imploring Holloway to take up the compact and convene a meeting of all the Big Ten presidents to make this happen. He met with us in an emergency session of the Senate, and he politely declined to do so. And he in fact said, I'm a lame duck president. There's nothing I can do. Other presidents won't listen to me at this point. They know I'm out the door. However, he went, a couple of days later and signed on to the big letter that went in defense of the Harvard president. And then a couple of days after that, the big AACU letter that has about 500 presidents' signatures on it now. So he was comfortable taking action that kept him in the spotlight and left us aside. But that's a different issue. Todd could tell you, I'm sure, stories about Holloway as well, but I'll leave it at that for now. Since the passage of this, of our first resolution, we're almost at 40 colleges and universities, although that's even probably an undercount because, as you'll hear from Bruce, we're talking about systems at this point, not just individual universities. I know there'll be some Q&A, and I'll stop talking for now. Anyone who'd like to email me, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We are keeping track of questions in the chat, but because it's going to get pretty crammed in there, if you'd like to hold off your questions until the end of the presentations, you could do that, and that way your question won't get buried in the chat. But feel free to put questions in there as you see fit. I'm going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Derek Peterson. Derek Peterson is professor of history and Afro-American and African studies at the University of Michigan. He chairs the Faculty Senate, which recently adopted the Mutual Defense Compact resolution by a vote of 92.8%. Derek.
Thanks very much for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you all at Rutgers and elsewhere. I've just put into the chat the page that links up with the 4 resolutions we adopted at our Faculty Senate meeting in April, which was organized in large part thanks to the genius of my colleague and friend Rebecca Modrak, who preceded me as chair of the Faculty Senate here. We adopted 4 resolutions. One calls for the restoration of our Office of DEI, which was summarily canceled, as many of you may know, earlier this year. Another calls for the defense of our international students, and a third is the statement of shared values. The fourth is the call for a Big Ten Mutual Defense Compact. The text is very much modeled on what came from Rutgers. So thank you for that. I do think that there are good reasons to organize around the Big Ten. I recognize that not everyone on this call will be from the Big Ten, and perhaps you'll be able to translate this little 5-minute argument into your own contexts. But the Big Ten, it's from formation, it's 1895. It's formed as an athletic conference involving 7 universities. It wasn't initially called the Big Ten, it was called the Intercollegiate Athletic Association. But it soon became the Big Ten once other universities came alongside. The CIC, the Committee of Institutional Cooperation, was formed in 1958 as a kind of academic arm of this athletic conference. And from the start, the CIC was, among other things, a platform for financial and scholarly exchange. There was a traveling scholar program in the early 1960s. The first thing the CIC did was to create a joint PhD program in biometeorology. There was a language training program, which continues to populate our curricula. From the start, CIC institutions saw themselves as sharing a kind of set of common interests, as my predecessor was just mentioning, Professor Boxer. Most of us are big Midwest universities. Most of us, with one exception, are public institutions. We have a shared mandate, that is to serve the people of our states, to uplift folks who otherwise would find it difficult to get into elite, East Coast privates, to enable the working class and other folks who have suffered historical injustice to find their way into the educated education system. So the Big Ten Mutual Defense Compact makes sense in part because it builds on a pre-established pattern of cooperation and on a set of ethical commitments that our universities share. But let me also point out that organizing around the Big Ten is a way of leveraging our collective athletic prowess into political claim making. The problem we all confront, I think, is how to make visible the violence that funding cuts and assaults upon our curriculum are doing to our separate institutions. How can we make visible, that is, to a skeptical public that looks upon us as elite institutions, how can we make our publics see what's being done to our universities, not just as a loss to the small privileged elite, but as a loss to our states and to our people? Let me point out that sports boycotts have a long and distinguished history as vehicles around which to organize opinion, not least in the boycott around apartheid South Africa. I'm a historian of Africa's past, so I want to briefly talk about the sports boycott that, among other things, was a means of organizing opinion against the apartheid regime in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. Sports boycotts took some time to get organized. They were put together largely by committees like this one. This is a group of folks marching in Twickenham in 1970 against apartheid. By the early 1970s, most South African sporting teams were not allowed to take part in the Olympics. They'd been banned from the Olympics. And likewise, international athletes were encouraged to stay away from South Africa, to deprive, that is, the South African public of the enjoyment that being part of the international sporting community could afford. In 1980, the United Nations Center Against Apartheid began making what was called a register of sports contacts with South Africa, which kept track of international athletes who traveled to South Africa as a means of embarrassing them. The sports boycotts came to an end in the 1990s as South Africa transitioned to multi-party and multiracial democracy. Scholarly assessments have it that they played an important function in symbolizing and consolidating opinion against the apartheid regime, and had influence, therefore, on other policy actions that were of more material consequence. So here's a question for us collectively. Should we not put the athletic programs of our separate universities on the line if we're targeted by Washington? As a proud member of the University of Michigan faculty, I would like to affirm that I enjoy beating Ohio State every year, as we have done for the past 4 years, very, very much. And I would very much regret any interruption in that uninterrupted so far program of excellence. But canceling what we call the game with capital letters would be a way to make visible the existential crisis that our two institutions face. I don't know if anybody on here is from Ohio State, but Look, if international students at our separate universities are being picked up en masse when we get to September, we should call for the cancellation of the freaking football season. If our curricula are being edited from Washington and we're being told not to teach about racial injustice, then we should put the Big Ten basketball tournament on the line. If the financial futures of our institutions are so gravely damaged by funding cuts, whether the insidious cuts to overheads or more dramatic cuts of the kind that have been inflicted on East Coast privates, then likewise, gymnastics, volleyball, and other institutional sports ought to be encumbered. The point is this: if our basic function as public universities is endangered, then athletic programs too ought to reflect that state of crisis. If we're in a state of war, we need to act as wartime institutions do. No other organizational alliance in higher education, with the possible exception of the SEC, has more consequence than the Big Ten. It falls to us as faculty leaders in our separate institutions to find ways to leverage this power, that is the power of athletics, I think, to shape policy and defend our institutions from the awful pressures that we now face. Whether this argument will gain us any advantage with our upper administrators or any leverage with our upper administrators, I don't know, but I do think it is a very good idea, and thus I put it to you, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, Derek. I see the comments are just coming in with applause and excitement for these ideas. We'll move on to our next speaker, Bruce Simon. Bruce Simon is president-elect of the SUNY University Faculty Senate. He ran and won on a platform calling for UFS to play a leading role in national coalitions bringing together higher education governance bodies, unions, administrations, boards, foundations, professional associations, students, parents, alumni, and donors, all united by the common goal of winning the battle to define what it means to price, fund, staff, and govern public universities and public goods. While leading the governance body for SUNY's 34 state-operated campuses and health science centers, and serving as a non-voting member of the SUNY Board of Trustees from July 1st, 2025 to June 30th, 2027, he will temporarily step back from his teaching responsibilities as an associate professor of English at SUNY Fredonia and his service to campus governance in chapter and statewide union bodies, including as a United University Professions delegate to Higher Education Labor United. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here with everybody. And I just got to say, I'm personally inspired by Todd Wolfson's leadership of the AAUP. And before that, the Rutgers Union and HELU's. And Mia, it's great to see you again. We're missing you over in HELU. So I'm wearing my UUP t-shirt, like I said in the intro, because I only have a couple more weeks that I can be an active UUP member. UUP is the union, UFS, University Faculty Senate, is the governance body. SUNY is a huge, sprawling set of institutions, and UFS only covers a little more than half of the institutions in SUNY. The community colleges have their own faculty council, led by a fellow non-voting trustee who I'm looking forward to working with. So I'm going to share my slides now, and I'll put the link in the chat afterwards so people can check out the links in the slides at their convenience. So I just want to go over 3 questions, hopefully relatively quickly. Why, right? Why would SUNY UFS, why would SUNY campuses sign on to these mutual academic defense compacts? What is the Big Ten to me, right? To quote County Cullen or misquote, County Cullen. Well, basically, this idea of working together to fight for the basic principles and values and functions of higher ed has been what SUNY UFS has been doing for many years. As you can see, we've been partnering not just within SUNY, with the student government, with the community college governance body, but also with CUNY's University Faculty Senate. Over the years, we've tried to maintain and even enhance close relationships with the big public higher ed unions, not just UUP, but the Professional Staff Congress for CUNY, NYSET as well. In all of our budget advocacy, state especially, we've made sure to align our asks with what we know are the legislative agendas of these powerful unions that have much more advanced advocacy campaign ability than we do. We've also been organizing, it seems like forever. Keith Land is on the Zoom, and he knows we've been at it since summer 2023. It's hard to believe the first Public Good U is done, and we're in the process of planning the next one. So more coming in fall of 2026 from us on that. You know, I've been in a position as well. You know, this is part of the why, I would say, to be active in all these previous endeavors. You know, previous UFS presidents, over the 15 years, I've been kind of active statewide in governance, have been very welcoming and inclusive. And I've been chairing the governance committee for the last 2 years. We've been working on an update to our fall 2023 Academic Freedom Toolkit. So when we started seeing these statements coming out from National AAUP, you know, from the start of 2025, when we started seeing this groundswell of statements and petitions from self-organizing groups of faculty in February and March, Michael Yarborough's like We Are Higher Ed, Daniel Lorison, you know, there were so many that were coming out. The governance committee felt we need to start collecting these and assembling these to make them available. When Governor Hochul intervened into the Hunter Palestinian Studies search, my executive committee was the only one I know of to write a letter protesting her decision and her influence over the chancellors and the president of Hunter. But as governance committee was getting ready to meet the deadlines of UFS for getting things to executive committee, we have a very deliberative process that emphasizes peer review. It took us a while, and we had to stop. So let me go to the next slide and show you. Rutgers came out 328. What really got us going, because as of 331, we had to freeze our toolkit and vote on it that week so that executive committee could look at it and get it ready for the plenary at the end of the month. In the meantime, UUP had their delegate assembly. The president of UUP, Fred Cole, gave a, you know, Churchill-esque kind of speech, a call to arms, fiery like Fred always is, and very on point, you know, suggesting, I think, as we've heard from the previous two speakers, that we're on a wartime footing here, that MAGA is at war with America, right? That we are experiencing structural adjustment, just like IMF and World Bank did to other countries. That's what the Trump regime is doing to the US right now, or trying to do. So, you know, I ran on this platform of, you know, they're trying to control or destroy us, right? And I'm happy to say that I was elected at the end of April by a 3-to-1 margin. So I think there was a lot of energy to follow through on what our own union was asking us to do. So the governance committee kind of sprang into action. Again, we only had a few weeks to put together a draft resolution that went to the executive committee on 4/21. We tried to draw on the call from UMass Amherst to focus on land grant universities and get the APLU involved. We were pleased to see that the CUNY UFS Executive Committee put together a letter that Hunter passed a resolution. Basically, we started getting a whole bunch of self-organized groups of faculty coming up with ideas that go well beyond the Mutual Academic Defense Compact. But in the end, we tried to put together an omnibus resolution that I think had 13 whereases and 11 resolves. The executive committee pared it down, and of the 10 resolutions that were passed at our plenary, well, 9 that were passed at our plenary, the omnibus one that included the MADC was the only one that was approved without any discussion or debate. So very quickly, let me just say next steps. You know, I'm happy to report that Chancellor King, in response to a kind of joint statement by UUP, PSE, NYSET, kind of calling him out for not being as vocal as they wanted him to be. This is a statement that they held on to for about 20 days after the resolution was passed at their delegate assembly, and they chose the morning of our plenary to release it. So he actually got a chance to respond the next day. And When you look at this, the link, you could see that New York has been taking the lead. Our Attorney General has been suing the pants off the Trump administration, winning a lot. And as a former, NYSED leader, the state education department, and a former U.S. Department of Education secretary, Education Department secretary, Chancellor King played, I would say, probably a pretty big behind the scene role there. So looking ahead, our current president has transmitted all 9 of our resolutions, and I should add that a 10th that was referred to executive committee just got passed. It's on trying to change SUNY's posture towards external law enforcement a little bit, taking into account what ICE has been up to lately. In any case, we called on all the campus governance bodies to support them, and so far 4 have supported the MADC idea in particular. Little tangent on this, maybe one avenue for mutual academic defense compact action would be student financial aid, federal student aid, which is under extreme attack. And actually our president and college council asked us to put together a resolution less than a week's time, which we did, which was passed on yesterday. So you can look at that link as well. As Keith and I pass the baton, do the handoff, he and I will be meeting with the chancellor at the end of May. We're going to attend the Board of Trustees meeting at the beginning of June. I feel like there's some opportunities here to maybe have New York or SUNY, maybe SUNY and CUNY, be the first to kind of more publicly act on this kind of idea, but I'll leave that to the discussion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I will move on to our last speaker for tonight, and then we will get to your questions right after that. Our last speaker tonight is Jennifer Lundquist. Jennifer Lundquist is a Senior Associate Dean for Research, Professor of Sociology at UMass Amherst, and co-founded the UMass Amherst Stand Together faculty group, which initiated the writing and faculty Senate adoption of the Senate document number 25-080A Resolution for Academic Defense Compact. They're also working to form Stand Together groups at universities and colleges across the United States to build Stand Together coalitions that will organize for mutual defense and collective action. Lundquist also developed the widely used and adapted Faculty Academic Freedom Toolkit. And today, Jennifer will share another toolkit related to defense compacts, and we will get to that right after the presentation. Welcome, Jennifer.
Oh, thanks so much. It's really great to be here. I really appreciate the efforts of everyone who's spoken before me, and especially what AAUP has done so far. So one of the first questions that Todd asked us to speak about is how we came to this. At UMass Amherst, we got involved or on the trajectory around the time when the March 10th letter came from the U.S. Department of Education, pinpointing UMass along with 59 other schools for further investigation around anti-Semitism. And so that was a really galvanizing point for us to see this amount of authoritarian overreach by the federal government. And so a group of us put together a letter addressed to the 60 boards of trustees, chancellors, presidents, et cetera, of the 60 universities that were under the Trump 2.0's investigation, calling on them to unite in a coordinated and proactive defense, asking them to form a task force to unite on effective coordinated action, and we spelled out what that might look like. Circulated the letter, a lot of faculty support, ended up with, I think, around 5,000 signatures, just over, in a matter of days, and then posted it on the AUP blog on March 20th. And, faculty around the country were ready, sent in what they'd signed to their board of trustees, presidents, et cetera. Very little responses or, people reporting back to us, just kind of crickets for the most part. And we had felt very galvanized in this moment and then realized that nothing was happening. And so then on March 28th, we read about Rutgers passing the Big Ten Faculty Senate resolution. And that was a total spark for us, a real turning point, proof of concept that faculty senates or some kind of governance is the way to go. And the way to go is figuring out a way to get the administration to be involved. So something with teeth. And I think that's the challenge that we're all dealing with. To most faculty senates are kind of staid and slow and procedural, but they're a real lifeline right now, given what's happening in higher ed for faculty governance, which is a major tenet of academic freedom. So the way we did this is we worked very closely with the secretary. We were just a group of faculty. Although one of us was on, two of us are administrators. I'm an associate dean, so was another, my colleague Kathy Ford, associate dean, and one of the members was on the academic freedom task force of the faculty senate. We talked to the secretary of the faculty senate. We sought feedback from the academic freedom subcommittee, and then the rules committee approved it for a full senate vote, and it passed almost unanimously. In the end, we passed not one, but two resolutions, one for a compact between APLUs, public and land-grant universities. So far, we have 13 who have joined us on that, and then one specific to Massachusetts, privates and publics, community college, et cetera. That process has been a little slower. So far, we have 4, but we're in conversations with a lot more. And I think someone put a link earlier on the tracker, which shows including the Big Ten and all of the different coalition activity that's happening. So one of the big questions that I think the big challenge ahead of all of us is figuring out, a resolution is not enough. What is the action around how to enforce that resolution, how to operationalize it? In our case, we created a faculty administration coordinating committee. We are lucky in that it's written into our board of trustees that faculty are a part of governance. And so we do have a tradition around faculty administration working together. We have 4 faculty members who are on that task force and 4 administrators who are on that task force. And they're pretty high up administrators in research, the provost, and university relations and legal. We have not met yet, but we meet next week. We kept the task force Senate-based in order to give the administration cover, because that is a huge part of this, is sort of managing the administrative risk. Our strategy was to try to at least not publicly be antagonistic at all, or as much as we could help with the administration. It was to be very strategic, to demonstrate to them that, we are, not just here to critique, but to co-lead, and that they can learn a lot from us and we can learn from them. And so right now, what we're really interested in doing is sort of documenting what works and what doesn't work in terms of working on this task force together and the coalitional goals. We're trying to structure it in such a way that will cultivate some level of trust and transparency with the administration. A couple of things, lessons learned, and then we can move on. We have been shocked. We've been talking to a lot of public universities across the nation. We've also been talking to a lot of Massachusetts schools, and it's shocking how many lack formal faculty governance. We expected that of privates, but many publics also lack of, a faculty senate or even a university senate. What I think is really important to emphasize, and I keep telling those who I'm talking to, is that even if you don't have a faculty senate or a university senate, there is nothing sacrosanct about that per se. That's not the only way to do this. Faculty senates, they can't force the administration to do anything anyway. So it's not like you have to have that kind of governance in order to make this happen. AU chapters can build this process out in the absence of a faculty senate. We also, one of the things I would say that we regret a little bit is because things kind of become path dependent based on your specific institution, right? And so because we were a faculty group who started this, and then we went through the faculty senate, which is faculty only, we have not had a lot of engagement from students, staff, and alumni. I think that is ideal in this process to the extent that you can bring in these other constituencies. And in our case, I think that, the role of the union, we have a very strong union here at MSP. The role of the union was vital in getting the vote, out to all of the faculty. But in terms of working with the administration, we were very careful to keep this as a separate process in order to get the administration on board. With the idea being that, at least in our case at UMass, the administration is more concerned with the labor, contract, internal matters, et cetera, and we're focusing more on external matters, but in strong consultation with our union. Okay. Should I move on to the faculty toolkit, or was there another part that we were going to go to first before I did that?
You can move on to the toolkit, Jennifer.
Okay, great. So Kathy Ford, who couldn't be here, it's her birthday. She and I and another small group of faculty from UMass formed a Stand Together for Higher Education, which we are moving into a nonprofit, we hope, to move this along into a national movement. We've been reaching out to partners who are already really active, some of whom are here in the Zoom room with us. We're also launching a partnership with AAUP to help support and amplify and organize this process. Basically, so we will be developing the website. I was really psyched to see that Wikipedia page that someone put together. We will be certainly adding to that and putting links to the website once we go live. We have an organizing toolkit for universities who are at all different kinds of stages, whether they might be in a rural red state with a non-supportive administration, or they may be a religious institution. We have different templates for each for thinking through these kinds of compacts that can be passed with different kinds of model resolutions. And we're also hoping to be early support systems for faculty coalitions who are forming at campuses. So, we want to be able to work with faculty as they're thinking through this in the very beginning. And then, of course, as we begin this process ourselves, it's kind of a work in progress of working with our own administration to then develop best practices for what works, what doesn't, that we can hopefully share with others to see if it works for them. I can share what the toolkit looks like. We're still developing it, but we hope to have it ready to go probably next week. Okay, can you see that? Of course, I can't see it now. Can everyone see that? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to give you a sense, let me just go to the table of contents. So the idea is to here's one thing. Here's a takeaway from our resolution. We've basically adapted the language that we wish we had used for our resolution because of some of the pushback that we got from the administration. So the administration tends to be very fixated, as you might imagine, on the legal aspects and the resources aspects. And so one of the things that we had to really focus on is, okay, so how can we change the language to make it clear exactly what the coalition should do? So one of the critiques was, well, you can't, especially a public university like ours, taxpayers are not going to be cool with money being given to other universities or colleges to, protect their research grants that are canceled, or your attorney general defending another or attorney counsel. And so in this template, we've put in areas that the language could be changed to show that it's more about less legally binding interinstitutional agreements and more about networking, solidarity, and public positioning, and exactly what that would look like. We're really hoping to align with red and purple states. And, I would say that maybe a large part of our discussion, I hope, will also be on what are the effective goals for the compacts to have working toward. Because I think that we have a lot of ideas about how to operationalize those. It's something that everyone's kind of figuring out as they go. And I think that's something that's definitely worth discussing, and I'm happy to share what our goals are. But now I want to open this up for Q&A because I think that's probably going to be the most generative part of this. So let me stop sharing here.
Thank you all so much. We'll get right to the Q&A just add time, and I see Liz is here. I co-chaired the University of Florida investigation and got to know Liz there. She says Rufo thrives on attention. Yes, he does. I'm going to turn it over to Todd just to close out this meeting. Thank you all for attending. We will be sharing resources as soon as we are able to go through and compile the list that people have put in the chat. Todd.
Yeah, I see Jen on stack. Jen, is there something you want to say real quick? We want to let people go, but I want to.
Oh, sure. I was just putting it in the chat. I was just going to say one thing that Isaac, Kamala, and I have talked about is turning the FOIA requests around on people like Chris Rufo and others, Saylor, et cetera, who are in the process of using all of that against faculty. What can we dig up on them and turn it right around to them? That's one potential strategy.
That's great. So I just want to first thank folks. I want to thank Jennifer and Afshan and Paul and David and Bruce, of course, and Mia and Kate who organized this. Thank you all for putting it together, and Derek. And I'll just say that we're going to work with Standing Together. I really appreciate the leadership of Jennifer and Kathy, who is not with us tonight, and share out these materials and really try to organize AAUP chapters and state conferences to move this forward. And I think that what Jennifer and Kathy did is fantastic, and we'll get it out to you all soon. But if you need other things, we need you to tell us. What do we need? The purpose of this was to really get questions on the table. And just some quick reminders. One is the Summer Institute's coming. Please sign up and join us in Atlanta. I see Rotua here. She did immense work on it. It's going to be amazing. Also, and I think Bruce was alluding to this, we got to get involved in the budget fight, right? That budget fight matters. It matters in a lot of ways. They want to cut the NIH budget by 60%. 60%. So AAUP is going to put out information on how to get involved in the budget fight. We also have an immigration town hall coming up. I hope somebody can put the date of that in the chat. I also want to say and just remind you all, ask people to become members. We're stronger together, but we're only get stronger when we learn how to ask each other to become members of our unions, of our chapters, etc. So make asks. We got to get stronger now. And I think I just want to remind you all that we lead. We're the ones leading, right? Whether it's the amazing work that Paul and David did over at Rutgers, or the folks at UMass or Michigan or SUNY, or any of the other number of universities, we're the ones that are going to lead this fight. We're the ones that are going to take on both Trump and also force our administrations to stand up with a backbone. And so we're thankful for you all for coming out. We're going to keep fighting, and we'll get this out to you soon. And again, we're very thankful for Jennifer and Kathy's leadership on the toolkit and all of their work. So thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night. We will see you all soon. Let's keep fighting.
Thanks all. Helpful and exciting.